Girls' Last Tour is a show about two cute girls traveling through a frozen wasteland filled with the remains of World War II technology. They are by and large the only characters in the show, and each episode will have a few vignettes of their lives on their adventure. Based on this story structure, there are exactly two things that this show can explore. 1. The day-to-day struggles of these two girls on their adventure, and 2. Philosophical musings about the nature of the world. Given how matter-of-factly the girls approach the cold wasteland that is their world, it was evident from the start of episode 1 that Girls' Last Tour was going to have to dabble in at least some philosophical musings. After all, the most interesting thing about most post-apocalyptic stories is the examination of a hypothetical breakdown in society. However, what sets Girls' Last Tour apart from other entries in the genre like The Walking Dead and Attack on Titan is that while other stories of this sort tend to focus on the reconstruction of society within this new world, Girls' Last Tour operates off of the basis that the idea of civilization is largely a foreign concept. In episode 1, there is a scene in which the two girls discuss the concept of war and its meaning.
戦争って殺し合うんでしょ？なんでそんなことするんだろうね。さあ、相手と自分の利害が一致しなかったり。
Due to the fact that these girls have, at the time of this writing, very little actual experience or even basic knowledge of society and civilization, the way that they discuss war is based solely off of objective facts and logical reasoning. To them, war is not a lofty and heavy word that carries the connotation of being about deaths of millions of soldiers and civilians. To them, it is simply another word for conflict. The way that this show presents war as nothing more than a glorified term for conflict basically sums up its whole stance on all of the philosophical musings that it presents. For instance, as the ponderance of the meaning of life in a completely bleak world is often a common topic of a post-apocalyptic series, Girls' Last Tour addresses this idea in the opening scene of episode 2. Yuri posits the idea that she and Chito are both dead and that the world that they are trapped in is simply the afterlife. Chito brushes this off, and the discussion of such largely ends when both girls conclude that since the afterlife is supposed to be warm and that they are both cold, they must both be alive. The theme about a life in a world in which the meaning of life does not exist, that many shows could easily base their entire core plot around, is disregarded in a mere 30-some seconds. All of Yuri and Chito's encounters with the fundamental ideas of humanity and civilization are largely resolved in anticlimactic shows of how, in the grander scale of things, none of it matters. When Chito attempts to explain the purpose and significance of books, Yuri is so utterly unintrigued by this concept that she accidentally throws a book into the fire. After all, what use is a store of information within the pages of a book if you're frozen to death? When the man the duo meet in episode 3 loses the maps that he had worked on his entire life, attempts to commit suicide, the girls scoff at the notion. After all, what is even stopping someone from simply starting over in their life's work? In a way, its complete disregard for deep contemplation about the nature of man is actually symbolic of how people of today view the world. In an age where so much information is available to us, we as people have to constantly live with the knowledge of the horrible things that go on in the world, and with the painful awareness of the fact that existence itself is a perpetual cycle of fruitless struggle that only ends in death. If one were to actually take a step back to think about how much the average person needs to live with on his conscience from day to day, one would realize how incredibly blasé we as a culture have become to these facts of existential anguish. That's why nihilistic thrill rides like Rick and Morty become so popular, because in the end we all know that the change that we effect on the world ultimately has no real bearing. Therefore, for a show to acknowledge such an abstract yet widely shared idea in such a dry and straightforward way, it is definitely worth some note. At the time of this writing, Girls' Last Tour has only aired 3 of its episodes, and episode 3 has set up the possibility of a major shift in the tone and plot structure of the series, so I'm not sure how much of this will hold up by the show's eventual end. However, I do believe that Girls' Last Tour definitely has made quite an impression on me to reach out to my generally jaded way of media consumption by being equally as jaded about the themes that it presents. This is not to say that this is the only aspect of the show that I enjoy. I found the world in which it takes place extremely interesting, and the background artwork of the show has done a stellar job of showing off the intrigue of this world. This is one of the more underwatched shows of this season, and I would recommend checking it out. Not going to say where to do so, because Amazon picked it up, but, you know. Hey! Thanks for watching the video. Before I go, there's a thing I want to clarify. So, when I've been reading the discussion about this show on threads like r/anime, and the other videos that have been made on it by other YouTubers like Mother's Basement. A lot of people seem to think that this show is going to get tragic. Based on the spoilers that I've read, I don't think it's supposed to get tragic, so if you think this is going to be another Made in Abyss, this probably isn't the show for you. Just a heads up for you guys. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, subscribe, and the next video will be out sometime. I don't know. Also, I lied. I'm not doing anything for 100 subscribers. Sorry.